Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for attending this webinar today. My name is Annie Randolph, and I am a Neuro Resource Facilitator with the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa. As you will see on your go-to webinar control panel, you have two options for listening today, mic and speakers or telephone. So if you're having any issues listening with either option, please try and switch to the other option to see if that helps. We will be recording this webinar today and we'll have it archived on our Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa website in the coming days, and that address is biaia.org. Also, we will save a few minutes at the end of the session today for any questions you might have for Mike and Sue. So please utilize the question box for this on your control panel. Also, there are no CEUs provided today, but we will provide a certificate of attendance that will be sent to all attendees through email following the session. Also, we have attached the PowerPoints for this webinar in the handouts section of your control panel, so please feel free to print those out if you would like. Now I will introduce our guest speakers for today. Mike Haddon has been a professor at Simpson College in the Department of Sports Science and Health Education since 1997. He has also been a nationally certified and state licensed athletic trainer for 25 years. He has diagnosed and managed 500 sports-related concussions at the high school and college level. Haddon earned an undergraduate degree from Buena Vista University and his master's degree from the University of Kansas in biomechanics and sports administration. Also, Sue Wilson is with us today, and she is a certified holistic health coach and has a master's degree in exercise physiology from Minnesota State University, Mankato, and has been a certified and licensed athletic trainer for 12 years. She is passionate about improving people's well-being by teaching them to create a lifestyle of health and happiness in their daily lives. She received her training from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, where she was trained in more than 100 dietary theories and studied a variety of practical lifestyle coaching methods. Together today, Sue and Mike will focus on three main objectives: understanding mild traumatic brain injury and concussions and bringing awareness of the dangers of repetitive head injuries and CTE. Also, understanding the link between the brain and inflammation pathways, and also educating attendees about lifestyle changes such as nutrition and decreasing environmental toxicity that can be immediately used for proper brain health. So I will go ahead and unmute you guys so you guys can go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here, you guys.
Yes, we're glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to go ahead and talk first. We have a lot of slides, and if you're looking at them and you're probably thinking that this is going to be about 3 hours, but that's really not the case. We're going to move along at a pretty good pace. I know I've been teaching here at Simpson for 20 years, and sometimes my students tell me to slow down a little bit, so I apologize if we do go too fast. But again, this is a pretty important topic. It's something that's been in the news at great length. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get moving. Just a little bit of introductory information. So I was on sabbatical last year at this time, and I did a literature review, and I focused on many different areas and many different topics, and some of the information I'm going to talk about today. The one thing that I won't be talking about today that Sue will be talking about is that there really won't be any clinical benefits that I have today. It's more theoretical at this stage in the game. Sue will be talking about some immediate things that you can do, a change in your diet and changes in your lifestyle that can hopefully benefit some brain injuries and possibly anyone out there that may be thinking that they have CTE. So hopefully there'll be some introduction of some new concepts. My background, Annie mentioned before, so we won't get too much into that, but one of the things that my background has led me to is the genetics, the genomics, I guess, not so much genetics. When we took genetics back in middle school and high school, I remember I didn't care for very much, but now we're talking about genomics and how the entire genome, or all of our genes working together, how that's changed as we are exposed to toxins and foods and whatnot. And we call that personalized medicine. It's very big in the cancer field right now, how they're focusing on the genomics of cancer and cancer cells. So just a little idea of how I got here. I on the left-hand side is my 11-year-old niece. She was started having problems when she was 11 years old. It wasn't until she was 15 years old that we knew that, or about 16 years old, that we knew that her condition on the right-hand side, which was a form of ALS or Lou Gehrig's syndrome or disease, that we realized that it was related to a gene, and that gene is called the FUS. And she was a twin sister. So there was and her twin sister is fine. She's healthy. We lost Alex when she was on February 14th, 2011. And so that's really how I got to be studying. Athletic trainers obviously know about CTE, but I would say that I would probably, because of her condition, her neurodegeneration, I focused or studied much more in depth of these neurodegenerative conditions. I think the natural reaction of somebody who gets a diagnosis like that of a family member, they're going to just dive into the research. Everybody that I know has done that, and it's in my nature to do that. And that's again how I got to where I am. Obviously, I have a background in concussions, a little of CTE. When Alex got her diagnosis, I started studying ALS, and then that, of course, started moving into genomics, which is a very, very hot topic in the field of medicine and research right now. The ubiquitin proteasome system and autophagy, I'll talk about that a little bit later. That talks a little bit about how our cells get rid of the trash. Every one of our cells in our body are exposed to different things, and in order for a cell to work, the genes have to make the protein for it to work. Sometimes we have extra protein that we have to get rid of. I always tell my students in class, it's like a family living in a household. When a family lives in the household and nobody cleans up after everybody, that household begins to dysfunction. So that autophagy system is like the cleaner of the cell, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So all in all, since Alex was diagnosed, it's been about 11 years, read thousands of articles, but everything started to come to meet in the middle, and so that's why I did the sabbatical, and again, that's why I kind of am where I am today. These are the different areas I think that I focused on. I'll briefly mention xenophagy. I've talked about the others down as I scroll down the list. Chaperones are mediators inside our cells that help proteins get to where they want to go and for them to function. If we don't have the chaperones, it's just like you would imagine if an adult is chaperoning a bunch of children, the children run totally free and it's chaotic, but the chaperones take that chaos and turn it into, I guess someone mentioned organized chaos once in a while, but they bring order to the group. We'll talk a little bit too then about the xenophagy and how microbes can play a role in all this. And then we'll briefly mention biomarkers because that's where a lot of the research is today on discovering biomarkers of diseases and illnesses, and especially with CTE and concussions. I mentioned all this before. We're not going to talk everything about those topics, but I do want to brush on all those. So we're going to be primarily covering more breadth than depth today. With concussion, I think that the biggest thing to remember with concussion is the neurometabolic cascade that's involved. The inflammation that is the result, and the result, we've known about this for a long time, but we didn't know really how to the extent of concussions and that neurometabolic cascade. The potassium, the K is the potassium that gets out into the extracellular space, gets out in between the cells. The sodium then floods inside the cell, and the calcium goes from inside the cell into the mitochondria, which is responsible for our energy and where we get our ATP, and that's how the cells get our energy. So we have that going on, and we also have the neurotransmitters inside our brain, an indiscriminate flow. So we have serotonin, dopamine, and acetylcholine, those neurotransmitters that are flooding, basically going everywhere. Again, we talk about chaos. This is what's happening. Oxidative stress is a result of that. Oxidative stress will eventually and has been linked to neurodegeneration. We're just discovering caspase and their role in neurodegeneration, and that involves basically perpetuating this inflammatory cascade. And then eventually we have the microglial reactivation. Microglia are the immune cells of the brain, and they're always on. I think this is something that is commonly commonly mistaken or commonly not thought of, is that our microglia are always on. What's happening after we are concussed is that microglia and everything I just mentioned above gets turned on. It's like a dimmer switch. The microglia are always on, but as soon as all that stuff I just mentioned previously occurs, then that dimmer switch gets turned on to the high point, to where the light is always on, and we don't want that. And so that constant inflammation is what leads to the neurodegeneration that we think of when we get to CTE. Used to be with concussions, the CT, that it was just a concussion. Now we're finding out that it is not so much the concussion, it's the repetitive hits that we get over and over and over and over again. And being around football all the time, we think of linemen. It's not so much the linebackers or the defensive, the other positions. It's the linemen that constantly hit their head all the time. So that's something that's many people have tried to figure out how many times they get hit, and they've actually have sensors now that they can put in helmets. So the best guesstimate that they've discovered is 1,500, 2,000 subconcussive hits every year. Dr. Blaylock is a researcher, has been studying the brain for many, many, many years, and he came out with a big article a few years ago, and he termed this as the microglia being constantly turned on, called immunoexcitotoxicity. And Sue will mention this briefly. She might not mention the term, but she's talking about how the toxins and foods, things in our foods, can turn our microglia on. This is one of the problems in studying concussions of CTE. How do we know the immunoexcitotoxicity is related to the actual concussion and the inflammation with that, or if it is actually related to toxins that we are exposed to on a daily basis? After a concussion, we have a blood barrier disruption, the blood-brain barrier disruption, which is the BBB. Mounting evidence is beginning to show the significant contribution of our gut and the microbes in our gut, and this bidirectional pathway that we have from our gut to our brain. In fact, many times when I talk to neurologists or professors of neurology and so forth, they're not even aware of this, and this shocks me. This is actually, it's very troubling because they're not aware that this bidirectional pathway through the vagus nerve. So basically, after one is concussed, the blood-brain barrier, just that barrier actually opens, and it becomes what was called increased permeability. And same with our gut. So it's like the tissue is stretching and allows the things that are in that area in past our blood-brain barrier. We're always taught, when I was taught in school, it was nothing can pass the blood, well, almost nothing can pass the blood-brain barrier. Now we're finding out that this isn't the case. This is a slide that kind of shows this, demonstrates this a little bit. On the left-hand side, you see that the healthy status of the gut, and then we have this the dotted line that goes from the brain to the gut. What happens in the healthy status is that everything is kept in check, but this is one of the importance of having probiotics in our diet. Good probiotics, not every probiotic is good. Some are basically cheapened, and they're really not getting the probiotics. And then on the right-hand side, it shows our stress and disease and what can happen when our blood-brain barrier is disrupted or after head injury. So the gut-brain axis, basically our homeostasis, which means basically everything is fine in our cells and around our cells. The gut is in direct communication with the brain. The blood-brain barrier is disrupted, so we have microbes that enter, and then the homeostasis and our detox mechanisms begin to shut down. The brain then is in direct communication with the gut, so the opposite direction, we have leaky gut that can result. One of the biggest things with leaky gut is constipation. So one of the things that we look at when we have our athletes who are concussed is whether they're constipated or not, or whether they're having troubles with their going to the bathroom. Concussion, again, this is this kind of reinforces what I've said. The cytokines here down in the definition, the cytokines are inflammatory markers. Well, not just pro-inflammatory, they can be anti-inflammatory, but in this particular case, we're talking about pro-inflammatory, so they actually cause inflammation. And it can also, we'll talk a little bit later about the gastrointestinal hormones. In this particular definition, we talked about insulin, but there are some others that are involved as well. Continue with the gut-brain axis. Exposure to pesticides, for example, herbicides, fungicides. There's a researcher out there that talks a lot about the pesticides and herbicides and the active ingredient in Roundup. And I don't want to pick on Roundup, but they are the main source of this. There's an active ingredient there called glyphosate, which is one of the reasons why it is believed our kids are becoming so sensitive to concussions. I don't want to get into too much history about way back when the football players used to wear leather helmets and whatnot, but there certainly is a correlation between our football players now that are, not every football player will get CTE, but there certainly is a correlation between our football players now with the number of concussions and the glyphosate use or the Roundup use in our society. The exposure to pesticides also will disrupt the sulfate supply, which sulfate in our brain is involved in glutathione creation. Glutathione is the most powerful antioxidant in our bodies and especially our brain. So that is responsible for removing the reactive oxygen species or that oxidative stress that I mentioned earlier. With our gut dysbiosis, I think there's one word down here that I think kind of sums it up is formaldehyde. And of course, formaldehyde is used, most of us remember that in our biology experience way back a long time ago. We use formaldehyde to preserve whatever we are dissecting. And of course, formaldehyde is a known neurotoxin, and formaldehyde with this gut dysbiosis can be created in our guts following head injury. So that's scary enough. I think there's enough said about that. This slide shows you, it's a very busy slide, I know, but it does show you a little bit about what happens with this gut-brain axis when we have the trauma to the brain, and you could just follow the arrows there, and it's basically what I've talked about so far. It can lead to gastrointestinal dysfunction, and again, we talked about that leaky gut syndrome. This slide also tells you a little bit about what we talked about earlier, the glyphosate and the Roundup, and how it prevents the glutathione production, which is a major antioxidant in the body. Also assists in the release of quinolinic acid, which is a potent neurotoxin and a neuroinflammatory agent. So this is quinolinic acid has been found in recent studies to be correlated with the hyperphosphorylation of tau. Tau is a protein in our cells. Normally, in normal amounts, it's okay, just like every other protein. But when there becomes too much and hyperphosphorylated, it is shown that can lead to CTE and Alzheimer's. Morley and Seneff are the ones that I talked about, who has done the majority of research on this gut dysbiosis problem and concussions. What they have termed diminished brain resilience syndrome. It's an excellent, if you want to know what you want to find that article, it actually can be found online on the internet for free. It's a very, very intense, very, very in-depth article. Okay, so CTE, just a quick history about this. CTE is first 1928, the Journal of American Medical Association. The author, Martland, coined it as punch drunk, and that term still every once in a while I hear. Punch drunk is in boxers. In 1937, then they called it dementia pugilistica, and that was something that was found again in boxers. 1949, it was termed chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and then in 2005, with the movie Concussion, Dr. Bennett Omalu found it in a football player and a Pittsburgh Steeler. Boston University has done the most research on this. With CTE, they claim they have over 200 brains. I guess I would take them for their word, but there certainly have not been 200 modern day CTE cases been diagnosed. That's closer probably to 100. Recently announced in the press, they talked about 90 of 94 brains in the NFL players had CTE. Be careful with that when you talk about that, because those were all brains that were highly considered, so that information was skewed, that it was highly considered that they did have CTE. So be careful with that term or that figure. CTE, the first 2013, we had the first NIH consensus conference as far as a definition. The definition there is you can read that through there, which is good. We're making some progress with that. The biggest thing is that tau is mixed in with the neurofibrillary tangles. CTE, there's 4 clinical features. Those are the 4: clinical, behavioral, mood, cognitive, and motor. We're going to talk real briefly about these. These are the signs and symptoms with the behavioral. Obviously, all these are related. The violence, the explosivity, the aggression, the loss of control, a short fuse, rage. Again, if you saw the concussion movie, Mike Webster, who was the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers for years, you could see this in him. You could also see it in some of the other players that had CTE. The other thing, the mood, depression, anxiety, labile emotions to the changing emotions. The other thing there, I think, would be the apathy, the loss of interest. They just don't feel like doing anything. And of course, irritability, I think, is another big one. And then the suicidality. Person is talking about suicide. The cognitive problems, the dementia, the dysfunction, the aphasia, which is the difficulty in speaking. They have difficulty speaking. The dysgraphia, which is the inability to write or the problems writing. CTE, the motor features. Now, this is something that is more found in the more modern day CTE, the motor features. I think probably the biggest thing there, they would have difficulty walking and tremors, rigidity, look very much like Parkinsonism. The classic CTE or boxer CTE, you can see there, the modern CTE is what we're focusing on. Obviously have the mood, behavioral problems. We're going to talk about that as far as the clinical diagnosis, because the group in Boston has come up with a clinical diagnosis for that, or a criteria for that. The difference in CTE, the modern day, and the boxer CTE is believed to be the nature of the biomechanical differences in the head differences. So instead of getting hit head on, there's more rotational problems, or more rotational hits. The first diagnostic criteria was Dr. Barry Jordan first proposed this. You can look through that. I'm not going to go through all that because this has later been, this was about 4 or 5 years ago. The most recent diagnostic criteria was just last year, so that's what we're going to focus on. The second proposed criteria was by Victorov. Again, I didn't put that in here. We're going to focus much on the Montenegro, and actually it's 2 years ago, from Boston University. They're terming it. They're saying now that we should not call it CTE more, because that is more of a diagnosis that is done post-mortem rather than being more of a clinical syndrome. So they're proposing now that we not call it CTE anymore. They're proposing we should call it traumatic encephalopathy syndrome, which I would be in support of. I think that makes sense. They're proposing 5 general criteria, 3 core clinical features, and then the 9 supportive features, which we'll go over. The 5 general criteria are the history of multiple impacts or concussions, not so much concussions, but those repetitive hits. No other neurological disorders that could explain their condition. The clinical features must be going on for 12 months, and if medication improves their condition, it is unlikely CTE, or in their case now they're saying TES. At least 1 core clinical feature, and then at least 1 supportive feature, again, which is in later slides. Those 3 core areas. Cognitive problems, behavioral problems. The biggest thing there, a person is going to be short fuse and out of control, and then their mood is going to be changed. These are the supportive criteria. We talked about those before as far as the cognitive problems and the mood problems. It's a long list, obviously, but this is what they're proposing, that a minimum of 2 must be present for CTE or TES to exist. The TES subtypes, then they're talking about TES instead of the types of subtypes. So this is a behavioral mood variant, but when you look down here at the next one, there's a cognitive feature without that behavioral mood feature. And then of course we have the mixed variant as well. So obviously everybody is different, and that's why they have these variants associated with them. The last one, there's a dementia component. The probable, possible, you can see through this that the probable case of TES, it has to be progressive. It has to have 1 potential biomarker. For possible, it is also progressive, but they have negative results on the biomarkers, which we'll look at in a minute. And then of course they have unlikely, which does not meet the diagnostic criteria. The possible biomarkers that are mentioned, you can see through that. That's kind of a list I don't want to get into too many details there because it gets kind of heavy science, but the amyloid is a protein in the brain that they're finding on PET scans. Group out of with Omalu and Dr. Bales have discovered a sort of PET scan that can diagnose. It isn't FDA approved yet, but it's still in clinical trials. So those are the biomarkers they're talking about. Where do we go now? I think the biggest thing we need to do now is create some sort of genomic studies on this, and we're hopefully we'll have a genomic studies here pretty soon. What we can do with the genomic study is we can look at the genes that are possible associate with CTE and take those genes, and then what we would do is we would knock them out, and then if we knock those out, then we would create that CTE, what's called CTE phenotype. And then of course do a proof of principle study. We have a lot of people who believe that in order for CTE and Alzheimer's, these neurodegenerative diseases, to fix these diseases or find a cure for them, we have to basically test the theories, and that's what we do. We would do with that in pharmaceuticals. And of course we need epidemiological data. We have to figure out what are all these cases of CTE, why do so many people play football and can have concussions and have this repetitive brain trauma, but not everybody gets CTE. The tau mark is that PET scan I just mentioned, that group out of California. What they're doing with that, they use a tracer and it attaches to that pathological tau. The biomarkers we're looking at now in the blood, we're looking at the blood, saliva, urine, tears, and feces. We're primarily focusing now on the blood and the saliva. Right now, it would be nice to find something in the urine, but it has to pass through the kidneys and so much to go through the body before we can really get to it. So that's something we're obviously thinking about, but we can't focus on right now. This is a great slide of this diminished brain resilience syndrome I mentioned before. You can look at that. It really basically culminates what I've been talking about the last 20 or 25 minutes or so. But I really believe that Morley and Seneff have really, I do believe that one of the reasons we're having problems is because of all of the toxins we're exposed to on a daily basis and the foods we're eating and so forth. So where do we go now? Obviously, we want to be able to teach practitioners what CTE is. We want to gauge the inflammatory effects through some sort of protein expressions, through some sort of biomarker testing, obviously good nutrition, some sort of monitoring tool, like I say, with the blood and in the saliva, whether they continue to stay inflamed, or we can continue to gauge that inflammation. And then again, we want to focus a little bit on the epidemiological data and why so few are getting CTE, but so many are getting head injuries. The possible treatments, nutritional supplements, which Sue is going to talk about here in a minute. Obviously, avoiding heavy metals. Chaperones are, again, they assist proteins to be folded correctly so they can function correctly. Autophagy is what I mentioned before about cleaning the house. Autophagy responds to many different kinds of stress. So what happens when our cells are stressed? They begin to fold improperly. They begin to culminate. Heavy metals are associated with that. Anything artificial preservative, that's why I left that blank there. And of course, exposure to many bacterial and toxins are associated with disrupting this autophagy process or cleaning out of the cell. Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Sue real quick as we get going with the slides, or we get the transition from the slides here. So I will turn it over here to Sue.
This one. Hey everybody, hey, this is Sue Wilson. Yeah, how awesome was that? A lot of good information from Mike, a lot of big words from Mike. So I'm going to keep it easy, I'm going to keep it simple. And Mike has been one of my mentors for, I don't know, 18 years or so. So I always let him do all the hard stuff, and I come in and get to do more of the fun stuff. So I am going to give you guys practical things that you can do right now that really anybody that is even just experiencing just brain fog on a day-to-day basis, with or without an injury. So here we go. Okay, so my story quickly is that I, like Mike, am a certified athletic trainer, and about in 2011 or 2012, I started realizing that people were not healing like they should. I started realizing and talking to my grandparents who were 35-year cancer survivors, one of stage 3 ovarian cancer and one of stage 3 prostate cancer. So I got to think, what has changed so much in our life right now and in our environment that so many people are sick? And so I started my research, and I started my journey down to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and really looking at the difference between how our ancestors lived and how we are living. And I have 2 girls, and part of being a mom is being able to protect them at all costs. And so I really started reading why our kids are sick and why maybe our 8-year-old girls are now going into menstrual cycles at the age of 8 because of the different things in the environment. And Mike talked a lot about endocrine, the hormonal system, and how we are taking in so many things that disrupt that. So I come from a perspective of being a mom, from being somebody that has dealt with brain injuries, somebody that has lost an athlete to a brain injury. He took his own life after suffering from symptoms consistent with CTE, and that happened just 2 months ago. So the cause here is huge, and my passion lies with what we can do in our everyday life to make lifestyle changes. So the brain and the world we live in, and they are combined in so many ways. I think one big reason is why a lot of people walk around with brain fog these days is technology. Technology is everywhere we are. We've got kids on their phones all the time. We have people driving on their phones. We have people multitasking. We have people just going on autopilot all day long in information overload. And we take very little downtime now. We take very little time to prioritize ourselves. We try to do 9 million things. You know, I'm a mom and a wife and a business owner of 3E Wellness, and I'm an adjunct professor at Simpson. And when I am in my professor mode, it's not really healthy for my brain to run over and try to cook dinner and then do laundry and then try to get back into my lecture mode. So we really have to think of the brain and how we make it work on a daily basis. Okay, I thought this was interesting. While awake, your brain generates between 10 and 23 watts of power, or enough energy to power a light bulb. Okay, so we're going to talk about brain toxicity and how, like Mike said, we talk a lot about how it's connected to other areas of our body. Okay, Mike already talked about pesticides, and to me, this is very serious stuff, because I've asked my neighbors, please don't spray. I know everybody loves their lawns beautiful and green and crisp and all that. But one reason why our ancestors were so healthy is, did you know that your feet have the largest pores in them? So when they walked around barefoot, they were absorbing vitamins and minerals through their feet into their bloodstream, right? They were getting their copper and their zinc and everything that way. My kids went on our lawn, and we do not spray, and we asked our neighbors not to spray, and they sprayed without letting us know, and my girls came running in the house with 3rd-degree burns and blisters on the bottom of their feet. Okay, the skin is the largest organ in the body. It does not want toxins in it. So when I have a reaction that quick, it's my girl's body saying, get this stuff out of me. So you have a right, by your own right, by a city right, to put a sign in your yard that says do not spray. Okay, so this is just another good website for you guys. I'm going to give you just a lot of places that you can start making action today, okay? It just talks about how hazardous pesticides can be. It can cause poisoning, birth defects, cancer, asthma, allergy. You know, our allergy rate is up the highest it's ever been. There's like 2-year-olds saying that they can't have sesames and they can't have peanuts and they can't have this and they can't have that. Is it really that issue, or is it the issue that our bodies are already so beat down it can't fend for itself anymore? Okay, so here's kind of a messy slide, but our bodies are messy because we live in a toxic environment, and there's not a whole lot we can do when we talk about the environmental toxins. We've got to worry about ourselves and take care of our family. But it really does. Everything comes back to nauseousness and headaches and fatigue and nerve damage. And we're always looking for a medical diagnosis when really maybe it's just our water, right? Maybe we just need to get away from everybody spraying Roundup all over the place. That glyphosate it is a huge disruptor to the entire body, and it is not okay that it's in our products, and we have to do everything in our power to stay away from it because it's making us very sick. Okay, Tufts University's School of Medicine posts on the CDC website that most antibacterial soaps, they're very, very harmful. They're endocrine disruptors. Trilaciclin, if you guys were just to Google that, the amount of research showing how toxic this is to our entire immune system is unbelievable. It went from just a few products to over 700 products on the market today. And I really have to commend the state of Minnesota. They have decided by 2017 they're going to be tricycline free. It cannot be in any of their products. And we really need to follow that example because, you know, all of us run around with the hand sanitizer because we feel cleaner because it's supposed to knock the germs out. But in a sense, it's knocking down our entire hormonal system and it can't function like it's supposed to. Like Mike talked about with the sodium and the potassium and how it flux in the cell and flux out the cell. Then you have a brain injury and that's disrupted. Well, there's a bunch of hormones that get released during that process too. But if they're not released because they're bogged down by a bunch of toxic chemicals, it's not going to help the brain heal. Okay, 1 billion pounds of this poison is harming Americans each year. And you know, I understand farming, and I know that farmers have to do what they have to do because it's how they put food on their table. But is there a better way? Is there a better way than spraying all over, and as the wind picks it up, it's spraying all over schools and communities? Okay, there's research conducted by Edward R. Close, who has his PhD. He found a thieves oil blend. Okay, it's 99.9% against gram-negative bacteria, 97% against mold. Mold toxicity in itself can present like severe arthritis. And I think a lot of times when we present with nauseousness, dizziness, fevers in our modern society, they are just so quick to say, you know, it's either an autoimmune or it's an allergy or this and that. Have we really looked into just taking some things out of our lifestyle? Okay, and mold toxicity in itself is a whole different lecture, and it is really amazing the research done on that too. So we go into our water. Okay, a lot of people think we have to look like this to be toxic, or we have to look like this to be toxic, but unfortunately we don't. If you take nothing else away, you need to visit the environmentalworkinggroup.org, their website. It is awesome. You can go in there and you can search by your zip code and see the different stuff that's in your water. And then I'll give you some tips on what you can do. But we know the body needs water, but how do we get it in a safe capacity? Okay, fluoride is a huge one in water. And it's unbelievable how much this can destroy our cellular function, and how much it can, you know, the thing with toxins is it's not going to knock you down the minute you're exposed to it. Okay, but over time it's building communities of toxicity in our body, so our body is not able to fight like it used to. I'm convinced that's one reason why these viruses are running ragged. All these different strands that nobody knows about is because, you know, with our ancestors, they didn't have a lot of toxicity. So their body, the minute it started to go under attack, their immune system could fight because your immune system sits with your gut. So it was able to fight back then. And now we've got kids that can't even handle a little virus here and there because their body is working all day long to get the toxicity out. Okay, so here's just a few, and I know you guys can print out these slides. And so here's just, I gave you some options. Naturalnews.com did a really good analysis of all the different water filters, what are out there, what are not out there. Personally, my family used the big Berkey water. It's stainless steel. It's really nice. You can go on that Environmental Working Group website. You can find the in your area what's in your water, and then you can pick the filters you want. So in my area, I have filtered in my stainless steel container, and it's nice. You just use the tap water, so you're not running back and forth with these huge jugs that you have to lug all over the place. But I am filtering out fluoride, nitrates, arsenic, and chlorine. are the ones that we are filtering in our family. So we know that the water is good. Okay, we know we need water. We need water to function. We even know that a little bit, a decrease in our water supply in our body significantly damages the brain. And so this is kind of like a guideline, okay, of the pounds on the left-hand side, and then what's your daily requirement. Remember, if you drink coffee, if you drink soda, juice, all that, you have to increase your water even more, because that's just sugar, and it's going to take the body more time to be able to break that stuff down. Okay, I know a lot of people say, so I cannot stand just regular water. You have to give me something else. So we talk about lemons. For those of you that do research or have done research on essential oils, a drop of lemon in your water is a great way to get lemon in your water and for it to taste better, just because we don't know where the peel came from. So putting the entire lemon or the entire lime with the peel on it inside your glass, you're exposing yourself to pesticides. So, but do your research. There's some really good essential oil companies out there, and there's some not so good ones. Personal care and cleaning products, we take this for granted. We take it for granted that there are 84,000, okay, chemicals that are used in our household items. 200 have been tested by the FDA, and five are regulated by the FDA. Okay, that is ridiculous. When you guys clean your homes, you should not have itchy skin. Your eyes should not water. Your skin should not burn. You should not have a sore throat. Okay, none of those things should occur when you're cleaning. Okay, and you guys can just go to Google Images, or there's a lot like that environmental working group. They've got all these images that you can see, but parabens are really, really dangerous. Propyl glycol, it's in our clothing, it's in like fruit snacks, it's actually lighter fluid. Okay, so your chapsticks, anytime you're putting that on, it's made of lighter fluid. So that is a huge one you've got to get off, especially if it's in your deodorant, because your deodorant feeds your lymphatic system, so it's going right into your bloodstream, and it has shown to increase rates of breast cancer. So men and women, you need to get off that traditional modern deodorant. So here are just some other things, like found in nail polish. Dr. Oliver Winker said you wear nail polish on a daily basis, you're 50% greater chance of having a heart attack because of the toxicities in them. And so my big thing is, if I can't pronounce it, I don't want it anywhere near me. And I can't pronounce any of these chemical names, so I don't want it anywhere near me. Okay, the average female is exposed to 128 toxins daily, just through their shampoo, through their foundation, through mascara, lipstick, their lotions. We have got to start paying attention to this, because with the skin being the largest organ in the body, it absorbs everything and takes everything through. So it is not, we've got to watch this. Okay, but this is why I'm really here to talk to you guys. This is the fun stuff, okay? Look at all this stuff. Look at what white vinegar can do, okay? White vinegar, it can polish your silver, it can clean your windows, but then it can soothe the bee sting, okay? You can help it boil better eggs, eliminate garlic odor. Castile soap, okay? You can find this at any of your local grocery stores, all of this at your local grocery stores. All-purpose cleaner, you can use it for a body wash. So you really can make all your own stuff. Lemon juice. Lemon, we already know, is antibacterial in nature, so you can disinfect your cutting board with it. You don't have to put bleach on everything, okay? So this I thought was a pretty cool slide. Apple cider vinegar. I will tell you guys, one of the best things you can do for your body is take a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar with 8 ounces of water and drink it before every meal. It's going to get your digestive juices up and running, and helps release toxins. It helps support the liver, it supports the kidneys, and you will see a change. You will see a change in your energy level, because it's starting to get the toxins out of the body. Okay, so Mike talked a lot about the brain and gut connection, and I'm just telling you, it's here, it's real, and it's scary. Okay, if you've gone to a doctor, if you're seeing somebody for post-concussion syndrome, or you know somebody that has struggled with signs and symptoms of CTE, you need to ask them if they've ever been talked about for the brain-gut connection, because this is huge, because our American lifestyle needs to stop, frankly, but it is so pro-inflammation. Everywhere is pro-inflammation. And when we have brain injuries, we create even more inflammation in already kind of a sick gut. Okay, so do you know how many brain cells a day you lose to junk food? Okay, as much as that looks good and easy and fast, it just, we've got to get a hold on how we eat. And it's crucial. Like, get rid of the sparkling waters, the Sobe water, the Propel. It's just full of dyes. And we knew 40 years ago that red dye number 40 and 10 causes hyperactivity. It causes, and then can go right into fatigue. We already know that. And so this should be, it's nothing new, but we haven't really taken that step to absolutely get it out. Okay, so much can be brought back to our lifestyle and our behaviors, and we really need to try to figure out how to get a handle on this stuff. You know, I have a lot of journals at my house of how my kids eat, and we don't do dairy. We don't do any dairy, only from, I'm not saying it's bad, only from the perspective that it gave my girls ear infections. I was able to narrow it down to why were we getting the ear infections, why were we getting the skin rashes. So for them it's dairy. For someone else it could be something completely different. I have plenty of people that can handle dairy and have absolutely no problem with it. But we have to start looking at these things. If you have a reoccurring, you know, if we can't get our handle on our symptoms, we've got to start looking deeper. So here's our normal brain, and here's our brain on cocaine, and then here's our brain in an obese state. And so this just goes to show that what we eat and how we manage stress and how we sleep makes a tremendous amount of deal in the brain and how it functions. Okay, so how can good fats improve brain health? This is where the good stuff comes in. And Mike already showed you this slide, one similar about the blood-brain barrier breakdown. And so I'm just reiterating here exactly what Mike was talking about. And we're going to go through this one quick because he talked about the vagus nerve and how they travel back and forth. A great article, and it was written very simple form. It's not all scientific stuff. I suggest you guys look it up. It's Dr. Karzin, and the title is Traumatic Brain Injury and the Effect on the Brain-Gut Axis. It was a really, really easy article to read, so that might be a good one to start if you have somebody that is experiencing all signs and symptoms coming off of a brain injury, or you know, a car accident or anything like that. Dr. Karzin just talks about 2 hours after a major after a brain injury, there's a huge increase of intestinal permeability. So all that stuff that we eat and that our body's trying to break down goes right to the brain. So if our brain's already under trauma and it's already inflamed, it does not help if we're pushing toxins that way. Okay, this is where I'm going to give you a lot of resources. So get out your paper and pens. And Dr. Mark Hyman, his Facebook is Mark's Daily Apple, and he is just one of the forerunners in good saturated fats and how it must be a part of everyone's diet. Saturated fats got a negative reputation a long time ago when they're combined with lots of sugar or refined carbohydrates. Okay, they get a bad rap if you don't have enough omega-3s. And then we talked a lot about the gut bacteria. If you guys think about your gut as a garden, literally like a garden, it is full of bacteria, and we are bacteria. There's like 60% of us is bacteria, and that's a good thing. But when we are exposed to all these different environmental toxins and these food toxins, it's killing our bacteria. So it would be like if you went out to look at your garden and your flowers are wilted and your food is wilted over. That's what a sick gut looks like. And when we've got that gut and we've got it connected to a brain and both need help, okay, we got to find a way to balance what our inner garden is. Dr. Daniel Amen, he does the ketogenic diet, which is very high good fats and very low sugar. Okay, he works a lot on the importance of good blood flow, on controlling inflammation, on blood sugar stabilization. This is a great book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. So you guys, these are things you can pick up right now. You can go to the store, you can get them online, you can pick up and really start looking for the information that you need, because a lot of times, you know, with brain injuries, it's this gap in between where the parents or the support staff or even the person involved, they don't know how to get better and they don't know how to help themselves. Well, this stuff you can do right now while your brain, and you can help that brain, okay? Dr. Main did a study with the NFL, and Anthony Davis, his main complaints were brain fog, irritability, paranoia, and that far off look in his eye. Okay, and we've had that from a lot of people that come and talk to Mike and I. They say they just have this look in their eye. I knew it. I saw that look in their eye. Right? So he started them on coordination exercises, just like table tennis, dance, and yoga. He used plant-based foods with 30% high quality protein. After 5 months, he had 80% improvement in symptoms. Now that's incredible. You guys, that is incredible. Okay, so we got our healthy fats. Olive oil. Do not buy any of your oils light. Okay, the greener the olive oil is, the healthier it's going to be. Okay, so you want cold expressed plant oils, grapeseed, walnut, sesame seed oil. Those are all powerful. Walnuts themselves are one of the most powerful omega-3s that you can consume. Olives are awesome. Avocados, coconuts. Coconut, you can make, a lot of stores have coconut wraps that you can actually buy and use those instead of your tortilla wraps. Lots of nuts and seeds. Okay, so you can make, everyone says, oh, Sue, eating clean and natural is so expensive and so boring, and I beg to differ. It is very colorful. I don't use recipes. I just throw things together, and I feed my family on $120 a week. And so it's not. We've got all sorts of tips, and I've got lots of recipes and tips on budgeting and all that on my website too. But yeah, look at this avocado with a ton of fruit in it. Just another little thing for you guys to use more the coconut oils and the wild salmon, the ghee. Use less of the canola oil and the soybeans. Okay, foods for brain power. You've got to get these foods in your diet somehow, somewhere. Walnuts, lemon, green juice, kale, cashews, almonds. So if you understand this and you know how important it is, but you just don't know how to incorporate them, shoot me an email. We can work something out. Okay, we do need to be a little careful with the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Okay, we can't afford to buy all organic in my family. It's just not happening. But I can look at this and say, okay, if it has a peel, I can soak the peel in vinegar, okay, and I can scrub it and I can eat it, non-organic. Now, apples, I will never buy non-organic apples. Apples are injected with ethanol gas. Okay, so you have got to buy your apples organic, and your berries, you need to buy them organic. Otherwise, if you do have some essential oils, there are some formulas out there that you can wash them with vinegar and some of the, like a lemon and a cinnamon, but once again, do your own research on that. Okay, your brain superfoods, we talked about water. We talked about Copper River salmon is by far the best salmon that you can get. There's a few places locally here in Des Moines that have good salmon, but you want to really stay away from farm caught salmon no matter what. Avocados, eggs, eat the whole egg, okay? There's absolutely no research that says that eggs hurt cholesterol. Eat the whole thing. My rule of thumb in our family is 1 pound of vegetables a day in 5 different colors. So red bell peppers have 3 times the vitamin C than green. The less you have to cook them, the more nutrients you're going to get out of them. Okay, spice up your life. Use herbs. Use spices. Okay, they work as anti-inflammatory. They help the body. Turmeric is huge for brain support. It helps decrease beta amyloid plaque. So throw your turmeric on your season your taco meat with turmeric instead of the toxic taco spice that you can buy in the store. Mike talked about serotonin. That's a hormone. Okay, eat your dark chocolate. Everybody thinks, oh, Sue, you're going to put me on that. You're going to put me on that diet where you can't have chocolate and can't have this. That's not what it's about. Okay, it's about getting your levels stabilized. Eat some dark chocolate. Okay, we cannot live without our good fat. And here's some good resources. Okay, here's some good resources. Grab one of these books. Okay, they all have different websites too. It's just awesome to learn. There's a group of people that we are out there fighting for people that are with brain injuries or support staff of people that have brain injuries, moms, dads, brothers, sisters. There is good stuff out there. It just takes a little bit of time to find because it's not in the normal realm right now of the Medicare system. Okay, so here's my contact information, but I just want to say really quickly, you guys, it is a journey. Okay, we started on this journey with my family 4 years ago, and we're not perfect. You cannot change everything at once. So sit down and figure out what you want to change first. Maybe it's your cleaning. Okay, maybe you feel gross after you're done cleaning. Maybe it's your cleaning supplies you work on first. Maybe it's your personal care. Okay, maybe you dive into the food first and really start. It is a journey. You can't change everything at once, but I promise you, as you start to change your lifestyle, you are going to start to change your health. So thank you for having us, and I think we'll open it up for questions.
All right, thanks you guys. We do have 2 questions so far, and of course everybody else who's listening, please feel free to write in your questions in the question box and we'll get those answered. But we'll start with Daryl. His question is just if you could define leaky gut syndrome, Mike, that would be helpful.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Leaky gut syndrome is a syndrome that is characterized by diarrhea or constipation. It is characterized by dizziness, fatigue, nauseousness when you eat. There's a slew of things that can cause leaky gut. What a lot of your top researchers will say is you need to start eliminating processed wheat. Is going to be the first thing that you really need to work into. But if you want to send me an email at 3ewellness@gmail.com, I can direct you the right way to the good research on leaky gut syndrome. A lot of people are being pushed that way when there's a diagnosis that they don't really understand. But yeah, in a sense, it's just when you have a hard time eating things, you have a lot of signs and symptoms regarding headaches, nausea, dizziness after you eat or before you eat. Yeah, it's kind of a complex cascade of events.
All right, thank you. And then our next question is from Deborah. She says, might a one-time concussion cause residual effects impacting memory and attention? Are there natural supplements and or activities like meditation that may assist with diminishing these brain functioning impacts, even if it is years after the concussion?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get into it, but you need a really, really good probiotic. Okay, and I suggest you watch the special on PBS.com. They did a big special on supplements because a lot of the probiotics on our market these days are dead. You know, probiotics are live bacteria to help our gut. You need to be on a really, really good omega-3 fatty acid, a fish oil. Make sure you have a good, there's 5 or 6 different companies I would recommend for that. And you really probably need to consider some lifestyle changes of taking wheat out and experiencing a little bit on the nutrition side, because even though the injury was a while ago, your gut still works every single day to feed the brain. And so if we can give it stuff that's going to help the inflammation in that brain, you should be able to find a little bit of relief from some of those symptoms.
Right, thank you. And then we have another question from Laura. What recommendations can we make to clients in the acute phase or first 90 days after having a concussion in regards to foods to help with inflammation or ways to change their diet to help symptoms?
Well, processed wheat is a huge pro-inflammation one. And so we need to slowly start pulling people off of the processed wheat. Obviously, water intake needs to increase in any kind of, pop and sodas need to decrease. And the big thing I try to tell my athletes, we really, really, really have to limit that sugar. Because sugar just feeds the injury. Sugar feeds on yeast, and yeast feeds on inflammation. And so we really have to make sure we look at those things, and really walnuts, getting our omega-3 fatty acids in us. So good raw walnuts, good raw pumpkin seeds. I know it doesn't sound exciting at first, but your taste buds will change, and it will amaze you. And so avocados, you know, if they can't take them that way, find a way to make a smoothie, whether it's with kale and spinach and avocado, and then a banana and strawberries and blueberries. That's what I have to do with my girls. You know, never serve a 5 and 7-year-old girl a green juice, right? But if the minute I can put some raspberries and strawberries in it and it's bright red, they're more likely to drink it. So we really need to stay with those good saturated fats, because that's really what is going to heal that brain.
I think the other thing that I would probably add too is and this is basically what Sue's been saying the whole time, is as far as getting nutrients, is most people don't, or it's very difficult for them to comply to a normal diet or getting the right vitamins and cofactors and things that, of course, the antioxidants, those kinds of things in their diet. So I usually tell our athletes to make sure that they are eating correctly. One of those who can't eat correctly are actually, they ask me about vitamins, and I tell them that multivitamins are a good idea, and ideally liquid vitamins would be best because of the bioavailability. It's more readily absorbed in the body.
And vitamin D.
And vitamin D. Yes.
Vitamin D3 is going to be huge in a liquid form. And so one good company is Metagenics. However, you have to be a practicing healthcare professional to get it. So like I have a Metagenics account, and so there's other local places that have accounts, and you can go in and buy from them. But please, be careful, and you have got to do your research on multivitamins too, because you don't want that. I picked up a multivitamin the other day that had the glycopropane in it, and just about floored me. So yeah, vitamin D3 is going to be huge, as well as your omega-3s, as well as your probiotics, and nuts and seeds, and your good oils. You know, even if you take olive oil and put it on your eggs, okay? Put it on your salads, put it on top of a sandwich. All that stuff is going to be really powerful.
Thank you. And then lastly, how do people connect to a health coach of their own if they're interested in that?
I do have some. You can go to my website, which is 3ewellness@gmail.com. Well, that's my email. Otherwise, just 3ewellness.com. And you can tool around on that website, and there's just information on exactly what we do. And then I can hook you up. I know about 10 or 15 of us in the local area that work out of our own home businesses, and not through a clinic setting. So yeah, you know, tool around on that website and see kind of what we're all about, and then we can go from there.
Well, thank you guys. Those are the questions that we have today. Do you guys have any last conclusions that you want to make sure that you hit on before we end the session today at all?
No, I think just as far as the head injuries go, I mean, like say the big thing, one of the questions I get a lot, two questions I get a lot is, if my kid plays football, will they get CTE? And the odds of that, of course, are very, very, very slight. But the other thing is, would I let my son play football? And of course, I would say yes. The problem is, one of the things that Sue and I have both been working on is legislation here in the state of Iowa for athletic trainers to be at events, because athletic trainers really are the professional that is most trained in recognizing concussion. So if you have kids and they're playing football or any sport and they get concussed, make sure you take it seriously. I think that would be the thing I would get involved with. And I would say try to see, hopefully you can get around somebody who is sports medicine affiliated, whether they're a physician or athletic trainer, and make sure that they get that they see that professional, and then hopefully then they could take them through the proper protocol and procedures before they return back to play.
And I think a big thing too is you got to do your research. One thing that when Zach took his own life in December, he left us a lot of journals, and you know, him and his mom researched and tried to find facilities. And so just don't ever get discouraged. Just try to make sure you're researching all the stuff that you can, and reach out to people that you've heard at different webinars, or you've heard at different speaking, and so that we can direct you to the right person, because our bodies are amazing, and they will, you know, they will help us heal it if we deal with it the right way. So just always stay positive and get in connection with a good community where people can direct you to the right people. So I would say off the bat, Myron is a great resource. So you guys all need to write his name down, and you need to bombard his email, because he can get you who you need to be with.
Thank you, guys. Also, just a reminder to everyone listening today that our Neuro Resource Facilitation Program here at the Brain Injury Alliance is here to help anybody who has experienced a brain injury, or caregivers or loved ones, connect to resources that would be applicable to them or that would be available. So please reach out to us as well if you feel like you need more help navigating life after a brain injury. And also, this webinar will go on to our Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa website in the next couple of days. That website is biaia.org. So please go there in the coming days if you want to rewatch this webinar or share with someone else. Also, after this webinar, you'll be getting an email with a link to a survey. So please fill that survey out if you have time, and give us any feedback that you have, or any questions, additional questions that you weren't able to ask today. We can answer those for you at that time as well. But I want to thank you, Mike and Sue, for taking the time out of your day today. And this was very helpful and very informational for everybody that we serve and other professionals that are in Iowa. So thank you again for being here, and for your expertise in this area, and all of your research, Mike, and Sue, for ways to benefit people after a brain injury. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, Annie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.